Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining today's session and thank you for expressing an interest in our MSc, our online and blended MSc in Financial Management here at the University of Manchester. So today's session, as you can see from this slide, is going to be talking you through recent trends and developments within financial management. So I'm joined by the course director of our MSc in Financial Management, Dr. Amedeo De Cesari, who is going to be leading on today's session and will be providing you with an insight into the recent trends and developments that are happening within financial management at the moment. Amedeo will then provide you with an insight into the course itself, so the MSc in Financial Management here at the Business School at the University of Manchester. So he's going to talk you through the structure and the content of the course so that you feel kind of informed about taking the next step. So please submit any questions that you have in the chat function that you should see at the bottom of your screens if you're watching live with us today. If you are watching this back on YouTube, please email me your questions. I am your kind of dedicated course advisor. My email address will be provided at the end of this presentation, but for the purpose of right now, my email address is studyonline@manchester.ac.uk. Before I hand you over to Amedeo, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Daisy, and as I said, I am your course advisor. So the MSc in Financial Management here at the university sits with my portfolio. So my role is to really support you in your decision-making journey so that you feel informed and ready to take the next steps and apply to the course. So if you wanted to discuss your eligibility in more detail, or you'd like to have a bit of a conversation around the course itself, please get in touch with me and we can book in a Zoom consultation at a time that works for you. So my contact details will be left on your screen at the end of this presentation, but please do bear in mind that my role is to really support you in the early stages of your decision-making journey and kind of application journey as well. So Amedeo, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of take this session forward.
Thanks a lot, Daisy. So I would like to start by, first of all, thanking you for attending this particular session today, and I hope that you will find it very informative and that you will decide to apply to our program later on. So I would like to start also by introducing myself briefly. My name is Amedeo De Cesari. I'm the program director of this MSc in Financial Management. I'm currently working as a senior lecturer in finance here at the Business School. I know the Business School very well because I've been around for quite a long time. And actually, since the very start, when we started working on this new program, I have been involved. So we started a few years back to think about an MSc in Financial Management, a blended program, and I'm going to explain later on what it means when we say that this program is a blended program. And we're very excited that, of course, we launched the program in September, last September, and now we currently have 2 cohorts of students going through the program, and the program I think is running pretty smoothly at the moment, and we are very happy about that. I also want to like to say a little bit more about my expertise. So I hope that I will convince you somehow that if you join us, you are in good hands because we know what we are doing here. First of all of the academics involved in our teaching generally also have a research interest, so they do some research in different areas. Some academics may do research in financial education. I do research in areas like corporate finance and corporate governance, which is quite mainstream in financial management. So I look at things like cash distributions by companies, so how companies distribute cash to their shareholders, and they can do that by paying dividends or by making stock repurchases, which are very popular nowadays. But I also look at other issues like executive compensation, which is always a very hot topic, hotly debated topic in the area. I also look at networks of professional ties, professional connections for executives, and I also look at things like mergers and acquisitions. Now, in terms of teaching, I've been involved in teaching on blended programs, particularly our global MBA program, again, for quite a long time. So this MSc in Financial Management essentially is structured based on the previous blended programs that we currently have, that we did have in the past already in the business school, and we have been teaching on similar programs to the MSc in financial management for quite a long time. And all of the members that will teach you are people that are part of our faculty, like Professor Ari Kurchet and Dr. Julian Jones. And these again are academics that have been teaching in blended programs for a long time. So they have a lot of experience and they're fully committed to this particular program. So again, I think you are in good hands, that's fair to say. Now, the main topic of today has to do with global trends, I would say recent trends in finance/financial management. And by going over some of these trends, I just want you to basically perhaps increase your interest in finance, in financial markets, in the activities of financial managers. We are, of course, going through some rather interesting and disruptive times. So the pandemic is affecting economies all over the world, it is affecting financial markets all over the world, and generally when there are macroeconomic shocks related to events like pandemics, of course, financial markets suffer and economies also suffer. But there are some sectors that do arguably better than other sectors. I'm going to touch upon a little bit on this as I go through these topics. Now, one important trend you may have heard about, and this is not a short-term trend, it's something that has been happening over the last 10 to 20 years at least. The trend is that basically there are many companies nowadays that even though they are quite large, quite successful, they may not decide to go public and get a listing on a stock market. So they may decide not to get what we call an initial public offering. The alternative is to remain private, is to remain basically a company without a listed stock. And nowadays, this option is somehow more attractive. I'm not saying currently because of the pandemic, but generally, more and more companies decide to remain private, and perhaps decide to remain private either indefinitely or at least for longer than before. Why? Because they can get financing from institutions like venture capitalists and private equity firms. This listing gap, what we call the listing gap, so somehow a lack of IPOs, it is something that's been noticed a lot by financial economists in the US, not much elsewhere. Now, it is quite preliminary to discuss the impact of the pandemic on the listing gap, but arguably, whenever there are macro shocks, companies tend to be reluctant to go public. And again, having private equity can help them make this choice. In terms of the private equity industry, there is some evidence that the private equity industry, of course, becomes more selective when there is a macroeconomic shock because they have less capital to invest. And also, they may be able to target those industries that are more promising after a shock. We know that during this pandemic, some companies, some industries are performing particularly well, whereas other industries are struggling. So private equity firms have a chance to target those industries that will do well or they think will do well. Next topic, also very important. This is perhaps less well known, but it is discussed by academics and by practitioners. Now, we have observed recently two trends on financial markets. On the one hand, retail investors, so small individual investors, are finding it easier and easier to invest directly in the stock market because it is becoming cheaper and cheaper, because perhaps they can use an online discount broker to invest cheaply. At the same time, possibly because of our teaching as academics, more and more investors want to diversify their portfolio, and more investors, they want to put their money away in funds run by professional institutional investors like pension fund managers, mutual fund managers, perhaps hedge funds for wealthy investors. So overall, the net effect of these two trends is that overall, we have observed recently an increase in the weight of trades by institutional investors on the stock market and also on other markets. So particularly in those mature markets like the US, the UK market, we observe that most of the trades happen and they take place because of basically trades by institutions rather than small individual investors. Another important point that is hotly debated again in the industry and also among academics is that many of these institutions are passive, so they do not actually actively pick stocks, but in order to keep costs low for their customers, they try to simply replicate an index. And these investors are becoming again more and more popular. Finally, more and more popular are also those high frequency traders. These are basically traders that do not somehow subjectively pick some stocks based on some information they collected directly, but often they create some algorithms, essentially some computers that can run these very complex algorithms that can analyze a large amount of data and that can then trade on the stock market as quickly as possible. So these are very important trends on stock markets and beyond. One trend that perhaps is less well known to you, but it was quite well known at the time of the global financial crisis, is what we call the shadow banking trend. So the growth of what we call the shadow banking industry. Honestly, it's quite difficult to define what this industry is exactly. So we can only say that this is an industry in which financing is provided by institutions that are not traditional regulated commercial banks, what we also call depository institutions. Okay, and there are different types of this, and of course in different countries we have different types of institutions like this depending on the local regulation. I just want to touch upon a couple of points concerning the shadow banking system. Even commercial banks actually rely on instruments like asset-backed securities and special purpose vehicles that are part actually of the shadow banking industry. So one of the challenges that commercial banks face often is that they lend to people, they lend to businesses, they lend to retail investors, and then they have basically they run out of somehow equity or resources to lend. So what they want to do, they want to essentially sell their loans, the loans they made to their customers, to other investors. And if they do that, they can then lend even more. And how do they do that? Well, basically they sell loans to special purpose vehicles that they themselves created. And in turn, the special purpose vehicles sell asset-backed securities to finance purchases from banks. So this is just an example of shadow banking. And again, there could be many others, and it varies from place to place. The final topic, I would say last but not least, and again, this is not a topic in which we can easily create a definition, because what is fintech? Well, fintech arguably has to do with basically startups in the financial industry, so innovative companies that have created highly innovative, disruptive solutions for problems that are either new, completely novel, or problems that were tackled differently by the traditional financial industry. So for instance, mobile payment systems. Okay, of course, there are already payment systems. Traditionally, people have paid by using cash, or perhaps they use cards. Nowadays, we can also pay using our mobile phones, and who knows, maybe there will be other developments going forward. And these mobile payment systems are quite important, particularly in countries in which people do not have access to traditional banking services. Other issues like cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are very popular. People discuss, of course, cryptocurrencies a lot. And companies sometimes, I mean, potentially at least they can raise capital by issuing cryptocurrencies. Even central banks could do that going forward. So it's a very fluid industry. When it comes to, I would say, when it comes to financial management, I think peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding are very important. because through peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding, individuals, especially entrepreneurs, but also companies, perhaps small companies, can raise capital directly from investors. Okay, they don't need to basically, again, go to a standard commercial bank and try to get some money. They can actually get this through online platforms that provide financing in different forms from investors directly. So this is quite an interesting development that, again, is not clear how the pandemic is affecting all of this. A negative shock will affect most markets negatively, but arguably there has been a push towards the use more and more of innovative technologies because of the pandemic. So over the long term, perhaps the fintech industry will also be affected positively rather than negatively. Okay, I think we can move on to the program. So I hope that this has been useful. Just to give you some context about what is happening in the world of finance. And I also want to add something. In this MSc in Financial Management, of course, we teach topics that you can consider quite standard, but we also give you leeway, flexibility to work on topics you may be interested in. For instance, in the final project that you're going to undertake if you join us with some of your colleagues. So we give you a chance basically to focus on topics that are interesting to you and to address questions that are relevant to practitioners, not just to academics. Okay, so what is this course about? Well, first of all, it is about financial management, so the activities of financial managers in corporations and also beyond. And it is quite suitable for people that perhaps they never worked as financial managers or in the finance industry, and they actually want to move in that direction. So they want to change their career. It's also useful to people that want to have a career progression, so they want to learn more about finance so that they can get essentially a better job, perhaps within the institution in which they're already working. So it's a way basically for different types of people to enhance, develop their knowledge and skills in finance and or accounting. And it's a very practical course. The course we design is quite practical. So finance is a subject in which you need to understand some theoretical foundations. So theoretical foundations are important. They are fundamental. But then in this particular course, we teach the theoretical foundations that are useful for hands-on applications, for practical applications. Okay, so we try to basically address those questions that managers inevitably face when they run a company from a financial point of view. So these are very important, very fundamental financial questions that we want to address in this particular course. It is a 2-year program which can be extended. So we are quite flexible when it comes to the length of the program. If everything goes smoothly, it is a 2-year program, but it can be extended up to 5 years. It's important that I explain what we mean by blended. Okay, what is blended? Essentially, blended is a kind of hybrid MSc, I would say in a very positive way, in that it's not the standard MSc on campus, in which you need to attend perhaps every day some classes face-to-face. So the material is online, is provided online. And that's very helpful if you're working full-time. At the same time, we also have some face-to-face components. So we also have face-to-face workshops. These are workshops that are, I would say, one of the highlights of our program, which differentiate our program from other programs that are purely online. And these workshops are compulsory, so you need to basically plan ahead to attend these workshops. But I can tell you that you benefit a lot from them. And this is the model that we use here in the Manchester Business School, the model that has been very successful in the past. One bonus, I would say, if you join us, is that we have a very extensive set of databases, a learning material. Finance is about data, is about, getting data on companies, markets, institutions generally. So you need to have this data these databases are very expensive. We have a lot of them. So when you work on your projects, you can use them, and this will be efficient. And these are some of the databases you actually use in practice. In terms of practical details, you can read about this on our website. I think it's very comprehensive, but of course, I want to go over these slides briefly. So first of all, we have currently we aim to recruit basically 4 different cohorts: Manchester, Shanghai, Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore jointly. So this is a joint cohort there. Again, it's a blended program, which means that, again, the material is provided mostly online. So you have online tutorials, videos, discussion forums, weekly, if not weekly, at least monthly assignments that these are not marked, but these are assignments that allow you to learn step by step, and also face-to-face workshops. We also provide, of course, opportunities for you to interact with us, also through our office hours and also by email and using the discussion forum. So it's really a blend of different methods of learning and assessing your work. There are no exams. That's a very important point, in that, of course, again, we are aware that you will be all over the world. We currently have students from so many different countries, so we do not have exams, but we have assignments. And again, these assignments will allow you to work on topics you may find particularly interesting, especially in the final group project, which is worth 60 credits, okay, in semester 4. Now, the workshops, currently, they are in Manchester and Shanghai, but of course, from next year, we also have workshops in the other centers, so Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So there is quite a lot of flexibility also in terms of location. In terms of commitment, I would say that this will depend on also your background knowledge and how quickly you can work through the material. But I think 15 hours per week of study, all in all, including, of course, the time you spend with us during the workshops, overall, I think that should be sufficient to do well in this particular program. But of course, you need to work consistently, and you need to have time to work, because ultimately, if you don't work, you won't be able to pass the assignments. So it's very important that you have enough time to work, to read, to interact with us, to work on some assignments. And if you do that consistently, it will go very smoothly in the end. There are in total 8 15 credit modules, okay? I'm going to discuss a little bit more about the structure, and a final group project worth 60 credits. So if we can move on to the next part, which we look at the structure of the program. Again, you can find information online if you want, but basically, in the best case scenario, if you really do well and you pass all the units in the first instance, then this program basically will last a total of 2 years. So we have 4 semesters. In semester 1, we have 2 foundational units: foundations of accounting, foundations of finance, and we already have the dates for the workshops, as you can see. If you join us, you will be able to plan ahead. We will be able to know, of course, exactly where you need to put aside some time. So basically, you need 3 days for each workshop. So if you have 2 workshops, like in semester 1, you need basically 6 days in total, over which you will be with us. And it's a good approach, because by interacting with us, I think you learn much better, much more quickly. You can ask questions. Another benefit, if we want to be very pragmatic, is that the assignments that we run over the time of the workshops will count for 50% of your final mark. These are group-based assignments, and often they're assignments based on a particular case study. So this will allow you, again, to learn how to apply some of the techniques we teach you to a practical case study. Often these case studies are based on actual companies. Okay, so they're also quite interesting. You can do also wider research if you want to on those companies. For term 2, we don't have the dates yet. But in term 2, the structure is quite similar to term 1. We have 2 units: corporate finance, global financial markets. these are actually units similar to the foundational units in semester 1. The only difference is that here the workshops will take place later on. They will take place essentially in the mid part, around the mid part of this semester, which is around end of May. Okay, that is the only difference. Another important difference is that in semester 2, you also have one sub-unit called data analysis and statistical techniques. This is part of the final group project, and this is a purely online unit in which you will learn some statistical techniques that you can use then both in your work and also working on the group project. Next semester, semester 3, again, very similar to semester 2, 2 units, financial statement analysis, international financial management. These are again quite similar to the units we saw in semester 2 in terms of structure and also in terms of timing of the workshops. The workshops will happen around the middle basically of the semester, which is near the end of December, near the end of November and the start of December. And you also have another unit called quantitative methods, which is formally part of the group project unit. Again, this will teach you further techniques, quantitative techniques useful for the group project. Semester 4 is the last one. I would say here we look at units that are somehow more specialized. So we have a great unit of venture capital and private equity. Here you will learn very carefully, very much detail how this industry works. It's a very practical unit. And then in business models and financial strategy, we bring everything together somehow, everything we learned so far together. And we actually want to push you to think a bit more strategically about the long-term financial strategy of a company. So we look at things like, for instance, large transactions affecting companies and how they would affect the value of those companies and also how they would affect the strategy of those companies. And finally, the group project. The group project, again, it's a great highlight because it allows you to work on a topic you like. You will work in a group. You will be able to a certain extent to choose the topic, to choose the method, to research a particular topic, to choose the data. So it's a great opportunity for you to work on something that is of great interest to you directly. Okay, hopefully it was very clear. And if you have any questions, please ask. Thanks for, again, listening to me today.
Thank you, Amedeo, and thanks for providing such an insightful session today. So I just wanted to reiterate my role and how I can support you in kind of taking the next steps in your career and kind of hopefully applying to this degree program. So my role is to support you and kind of to discuss your options with you in the early stages of your application journey. Now, I do a number of Zoom consultations with prospective students like yourself, like I said at the beginning of this session. They're a really nice way for me to get to know you in terms of your academic and professional background, but also your motivations for wanting to study with us, so to study on the MSc in financial management. So please do get in touch with me to discuss your options so that you feel confident that you're making the right decision for you, both professionally and on a personal level as well in terms of development. So thank you to everyone who has listened today. This recording will be sent out to all of you who have joined us live, but also it'll be on our YouTube channel as well, so you can listen back as well. We've had a question come through, Amedeo. I'm not sure if you can see that.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, so a student has asked if they want to do this course part-time. How is this course going to help me and how flexible is the course considering my time? This particular student is full-time working as a pipeline consultant in the oil and gas sector from 4 days a week and also runs an Indian restaurant, which is really nice in Aberdeen. So Amedeo, do you want to kind of answer that question, if that's okay?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I mean, first of all, in terms of how useful it is, well, this will depend, of course, on your current role, what you do actually in your current role. But basically, just to repeat, this is mostly about financial management. So this course has to do with decisions taken by managers in corporations. So I'm not saying it's not a useful degree also perhaps for consultants like maybe financial analysts, consultants work in different types of institutions, or even people working in investment banking. It's definitely very useful because we look at, for instance, valuation techniques that can be used in different contexts by different types of professionals. But I think it's a perfect course for managers, for people that manage a company, perhaps people that need to engage in decisions that have to do with financing of projects, with identification of projects that are actually valuable to the company. So I think that overall the course could be quite useful to you based on what you are telling us in your message. Now, in terms of how much time it takes, again, to do this course and how much flexibility we have in this course, I think the course is quite flexible in that you actually basically in this course you can, again, as I said, if everything goes very smoothly, you go very quickly, you can finish within 2 years. However, you can also take it a bit more slowly. I have to say that the first 2 units are of paramount importance. So ideally, if you want to do this course a bit more slowly, at least do the first 2 units quickly, because those first 2 units are prerequisites for other units later on. Okay, so the first 2 are very important, and then later you can actually manage your time a bit better. In terms of time, I would say that it is an MSc, so it requires quite a lot of effort. So 15 hours per week, I think it is manageable, but it is still an effort that you need to consider. So you need to have some time to work on this MSc, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to successfully complete it. So that's something that you need to consider, but I think it is overall manageable for professionals. And we have been using a similar structure, a similar kind of structure for our blended programs in the past, in different contexts. And most of our students work full-time, and I think most of our students can actually successfully finish our programs. So it is manageable.
Great, thank you, Amedeo. And obviously from my perspective as your course advisor now, I understand that a lot of students have very varying commitments and different commitments. So this is where it's really important that you get in touch with me in the early stages so we can walk you through and I can discuss your options with you. So if you would like to kind of book in a consultation with me or send through your CV, I can really kind of have a bit of an in-depth discussion with you about kind of the course, that level of commitment that is coming from your part. Now, we've had a question around kind of career services. So the University of Manchester has a tremendous amount of resources that will be available to you should you join us in September 2021. Now, if you are successful in your application to the course, I then hand you over to your study advisor, who is your support during the program, so during the duration of the 24 months that you're with us. So they will be able to have conversations with you around kind of career opportunities and obviously introduce you to the career services team that we have at the University of Manchester as well. So like Amedeo said in the middle of this session today, the resources available to you will really kind of help you both on the course but also kind of outside the course as well. Amedeo, I don't know if you would like to add anything onto that.
No, I don't have much to add. Thanks.
No problem. So I will wrap up today's session. I'll send this recording around to you all who have joined us live. But for those who are listening back on YouTube, thanks for joining. And any questions, you know where I am, and I look forward to hearing from you in due course. Amedeo, thank you again for your time.
Thanks a lot, Daisy. And thanks a lot again for your attendance. Yeah. Okay.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.